What is up, Merce Nation? Javier Mercedes here for yet again another Passion in Progress show. And today is probably the most specialist of podcasts that we have today because we have the most specialist of VIP. We got VIP access today to one of the most important people on the earth, the love of my life, Sabrina Mercedes.
Aw, I love you.
Before we get this started on a interesting, I believe will be interesting podcast and the type of format that we will lay out here in a second, I just want to take a second to thank all of the listeners of the podcast so far. Thank you so much for sharing it out. And as of yesterday, I just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for following me in this hashtag Passion in Progress. I just want to share out one of the tweets that MethodBox did. So well deserved. Javier is one of the most dedicated, hardworking, creative, and driven creators on this platform. The amount of passion he exudes in each and every one of his videos is a constant source of inspiration for all of us. Huge congrats, brother. Hashtag Merce Nation. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. MethodBox was on the show a couple podcasts ago, if you want to check them out. If you want to support the podcast, you could share it out and tweet it to a friend just like MethodBox did, or, share it on Facebook. You could text it to a friend, or you could write it on a handwritten letter for all of those Christmas cards that you have coming up. Just put, hey, you should check out Passion in Progress with Javier Mercedes on those Christmas cards. And if you really love the show, you can support me on Patreon, patreon.com/Javier Mercedes. We have here Sabrina.
Hi,
I'm going to take these headphones off. Do you want to explain what's going to happen? Because I believe this is going to be some sort of AMA or Ask Me Anything type of thing. But since Thanksgiving is here, I believe this is going to be a family-oriented one. Can you explain what you did?
We were trying to figure out what a cool podcast episode might look like for this week of Thanksgiving, a time of reflection and being with family and friends. And so I decided it might be a good idea to flip the script on Javi this week and interview him instead of having him interview others.
Oh, did you think I was going to interview my wife? Nope. Other way around.
I'm not passionate enough. Just joking. But I thought it would be fun to incorporate family in this endeavor. And so I reached out to our family members and asked them to send me questions that I could ask Javi. So Emily wants to know, what are the top 3 things to keep in mind for somebody starting a YouTube channel?
These aren't in any specific order, but I believe it's community, purpose, and then the technical things. But when you start a YouTube channel, whether you're doing it for fun, or I feel like for people that are doing it for fun, eventually get to the point where they want to have income and do the other things for the YouTube channelness. But definitely have the purpose there for what you're doing. If you don't have purpose, then it's just going to falter, and halfway down the road, it's going to just be something that's not, you're going to do all this work and then you're going to be like, nope, let's go do something else. So whatever the purpose that you're making the content for, it has to be something that you stand behind. Then community is a big part, at least from my experience. Now, there's other people that may have a viral video and then all of a sudden they have all these subscribers and whatnot and may do whatever they want with that. Or you have a corporate entity that has they just put out videos for whatever. But at this point in time, the ecosystem within YouTube has a lot of those corporate entities, let's say it's something like The Late Show. Those are always going to have people watching those because that's what it is. It's just a show that puts out highlight clips. But there's also the other part of the ecosystem where it's the people that are behind making the content. It's any average person like you and me. And I think that's what makes it so great. So if you are posting content, engage and don't be a dick. Don't, I mean, I'm making assumptions, but post your stuff and then also find a community that is doing like-minded things and then grow together and come up through the ranks together. And then the third thing would be just the technical side of things. If you really want to succeed on YouTube, again, there's this whole thing with you could put out one video and one piece of content changes everything. But for most people, it's consistency, and it's also like just knowing the SEO things. So knowing like, all right, let's put our title. Daryl Eves, one of the SEO like masterminds of YouTube, says that content is, I think, 4 things: thumbnail, your title, your tags, and your the actual video. So, and by tags I mean like your tags and description. So there's 4 things that you have to keep in mind there. In order to have a successful piece of content, you need to be crushing it on all of those, and that just takes time. I feel like for most people, if they don't know what they're doing, they just have to do a whole bunch of content and then figure out what works for them and keep doing that. Purpose, community, and content.
So this question actually comes from Kristen. Was there a pivotal moment where you decided to leave behind the familiar and take the leap to exclusively focus on your Passion in Progress podcast?
Maybe some people don't know this, but the impetus of Passion in Progress, it was not actually named Passion in Progress. It was a show on Wednesdays called Interv Wednesday, an interview on a Wednesday. And one of my first guests that I had was Leo and Tiffany Rezig of a wine. They started their own wine company, and I sat down with them and I did an interview, and the interview lasted like more than 3 hours or something like that. It was crazy. And I made a short video for it, and I was like, man, there's so much information in here. I don't want to just have this bound to a specific amount of time. I was like, oh man, why don't I just take these interviews that I've been doing, because at that time I had done a couple, and turn it into a podcast. Lo and behold, the person sitting in front of me helped me out with the name Passion in Progress, because she was like, man, you're literally pursuing your passion and it's in progress. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like such a like, it goes like 5 levels deep, because I'm pursuing my passion, being surrounded by so many motivating individuals that were pursuing their passions. It was like, man, they seem pretty happy doing what they're doing. I bet I could do the same if I put in the work. So that's how I ended up where I'm at right now.
Well, that actually leads in really well to the next question.
Look at this. You got segues already. She's got... Cool.
So this is also from Kristen. Is work-family life balance a myth? What do you do to intentionally grow in both verticals?
That actually leads to what I'm doing this November with No Small November. There's a creator called Cody Warner. I talk about him a lot on the podcast, but he has this thing called No Small Creator, and this community that I'm a part of on Facebook. He set out to make a challenge for everybody in the community, because he himself was like a salesman and he was a video production dude, and he wanted everybody, and he found it's hard for him to always sell in the month of November. So he wanted to challenge everyone to like do a good, or like a big task or something like that during the month of November. So for me, there's a couple of different things that I'm doing right now, but one of them is to spend an hour with my family every single day. That is sans any cell phone, social networking, or anything. I don't know how I'm doing. You'll have to ask Sabrina.
Well, when he initially said an hour a day, I was like, only an hour a day? I think you actually spend more than an hour a day with us sans any social media.
Well, that's true. That's true, but it's also, I feel like even if like we're feeding the family or something like that, and still like, oh, let me check and make sure I reply to comments and all that stuff. Yeah. So it's like, when Sabin gets home, at least I put the phone down and I'm present in that moment. But yeah, obviously I spend more time, but it's like, it's different when you like have your phone in a different room.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then also with the work, it's completely different when you leave your job and pursue entrepreneurship, because you have to take on all the hats. You have to take on the accounting, you have to take on the marketing, that probably takes up the most amount of my time, is marketing. Just anything that I'm doing right now is marketing. Well, not just marketing, but saying like you're a creator, you only get like 10% of the time to actually create something. And then just once you're in the beginning stages, just marketing it out there to networking. Be like, yeah, networking. But just getting the word out there for what you're trying to do, so you can set the infrastructure for later stuff. I would say a lot of it is probably work. Once the kids are home, spend time with the kids, and then like once they're asleep, then head back up to the room and do more things and post things, and then hopefully not stay up to 3 a.m. and then have your daughter wake up and then feed her and then go to sleep and then wake back up at like 6. That hasn't happened, but it probably has happened. That's a joke. So to give you an idea, the work-life balance is always an ever-changing thing, but to put mechanisms in place to keep that in check helps.
So this question is coming from your brother, Brian.
Awesome.
How did your early childhood radio episodes taped on cassette tapes prepare you to become a big-time podcaster?
I never even thought about that. That is crazy. That is so crazy. Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of things I saw in home videos of you as a child that lead up to who you are today.
So I'm a brother of 3 older brothers and 1 little sister. And Brian is the closest to me in age. And what he would do when we were growing up is actually, I think if you're watching this on the, oh my gosh, it's so full circle. If you're watching this online right now, there's a normal Nintendo behind me, right there. And what I used to do is I would take a tape cassette player and hold it up to the television while my brothers were playing video games, and I would record the video games while they were playing, but I would only want to do it for the music. So I'd actually have my brother like, hey, can you just sit in the corner for a second so I can get this clean? And then what I would do is I would hit record, then I would stop the record, I would take the tape player away from the speaker, then I would like go up to the, back then there were actual microphones on the tape recorders, and I would like hit record on the tape recorder and be like, that was Tasmanian Devil, or that was Mega Man X, level 5, boss 3, 8A, because like back then they had all these things in the menu system where they didn't really label them too well, but that's what I would do. And I would create whole mixtapes of that. So my brothers would play video games and I would record them. It was kind of like a version of Twitch nowadays, and I would just do it via a radio station. So I would even interview I would even interview my brothers too. So like I would get play-by-play in between. I'd be like, oh hey Javier, or hey Brian, like how is that boss? And he'd be like, he's very dumb. And then like I would try and get more out of the conversation, but that was about it. But I know I still have about 4 tapes that are still in like existence somewhere with me. Maybe, just maybe, that's something I should record on to digital and put that on Patreon for all my patrons. If they would like to hear that, I should make a digital version of that.
They're amazing. I've heard them.
So if you want to listen to like a 5-year-old version of me doing a radio show with normal Nintendo games, that may just happen. Skipping a whole bunch in between, I guess that was my first versions of doing a podcast.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard one of those recordings, and it literally blew my mind because at the time you were sound engineer for Doppler, and you were literally listening to Nintendo music and like critiquing the Nintendo music in your audio tapes from when you were 3 years old.
Yes. That being said, 4 years ago, I made a mashup of 2 Chainz and a chiptune artist called Zeph. And I retweeted it out because I didn't even know what Twitter was 4 years ago, but I retweeted it out. And the guy actually has like a significant following on Twitter, and he was like, what? This has been on the internet for 4 years and I've never seen it before. And he like private messaged me and he was like, hey, how do I get this? Can I please have that? 2 Chainz didn't respond, but I'm still waiting for 2 Chainz.
Come on, man. Come on. We got to get you on the podcast.
Yes.
Do you still renew your annual membership to Brian's Club?
Brian's Club. This is all just going to be like inside joke stuff where I have to explain inside jokes.
Awesome inside jokes.
All right. So back in the day, my dad's half the family lives in New York City, and I would go, I was a little bunion at the time. That's a term. And what we would do is either every Christmas or Thanksgiving, we would go visit our family in New York City. And while we were going, we had the old school, the amazing, I don't even know if anybody listening, well, actually, I bet people listening to the podcast would get it. The old GMC vans, the ones like where you could kind of like walk around in the back. And then you could like put a table in the middle and like play poker if you wanted to. There were some legit vans, but the back seat folded down into a bed. And on our trips to New York City from Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I grew up, it would be more than a day to do that trip. We would do this thing called Brian's Club, where my brother Brian would be like a fitness instructor, and he would basically just like give us a boot camp in the back of the car while we were driving down the highway. May or may not have been wearing seatbelts like the whole time, but I feel like this was a different day and age. But it was so cool because back there, there was so much space, especially when you're a little kid, and you can just do like sit-ups and flips and somersaults and all that stuff. And that's what we would do.
Okay, so this question actually comes from your dad. What has been the most challenging aspect of starting your own podcast?
The most challenging aspect, getting guests. We're doing this episode right now, but I already have 2 other podcasts recorded. At one point in time when I first started, I had backed up 7 podcasts that were being released. And that really helped because that was when I was starting all of the business things, like setting up my business accounts and all that other stuff. So having all of those in the backlog enabled me to spend those other weeks putting all of the infrastructure in place to be successful in the future.
Do you think that your time recording the podcast at the Chive helped you kind of envision and realize what it would be like to do a podcast yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what Sabrina's talking about is I recorded and edited 93 podcasts for the Chive podcast before I even started this podcast. So I know what I was doing on the recording end. Plus I was an audio engineer for 4 years. It's a little different when you're recording the podcast and you also edit it, because you can understand what works and what doesn't work in a conversation.
This one is coming from my mom. In your eyes, what is a life well spent?
What is a life well spent? I'm just like going to take all of these questions, just ask them to all of my guests. There's a guy, David Meltzer, that has a podcast right now that I've been really digging. He talks about frequency, like vibrating on a specific frequency, and he just uses it as an analogy of relating to people and what you do and your purpose in life. I think a life well spent is living a life in your purpose or in your strengths, and providing value to people wherever you can. And there's also a quote that he just had. It was be more interested than interesting, where that one struck a chord with me, because in this field, it's nice to have other people take the reins and just like hear their story and have them tell their have them tell their journey to you and what they've learned. And I think a life well spent would be somewhere where I could wake up, do what I want to do and what I've planned to do in the day, and not be bound by other circumstances. Now I know that's like, you can do that anyway, but in some versions of that, you probably get fired from a job because you didn't show up, right, because you wanted like Krispy Kreme or something like that. That never happened, but I'm just using it as an example. But be able to wake up and know that I am pursuing something that has meaning and also is providing value in a positive way to other people, and being a great husband and father.
So this question actually comes from my nephew, Cade. What was it like growing up in such a big household?
Yeah, it was awesome. The thing you have to keep in mind though is that our family, so my oldest brother is 10 years older than me, and my younger sister is 10 years younger than me. So there's 20 years apart between the siblings. When I started, I had 3 older brothers, and they were already playing sports, or they were embedded into different like communities. So when I would get to the age where I could participate in anything, they could already like embed me in those communities, or they already like, you get a lot of hand-me-downs, but you also get to learn the ropes about a whole bunch of stuff and experiences before I want to say other people do, just because you're surrounded by individuals that have already done things. When you get to college, and then also when you go and do real life things, having a support system there in siblings is like, that's basically like how I got to where I'm at today. It's crazy how like, all right, my brothers went to Dominican Republic for a couple of years. They just like spent time there, came back to Atlanta, and right on time for me to graduate. That way I could just move to Atlanta the day after Christmas and bunk up with them.
Thank God.
And then and then go pursue a job. And at the time I was freelancing, and I had like 4 different freelancing jobs that I would do. And from there, I would move on in different places in my life. And also the job that I got at the Chive was due to one of my brothers already working there. So I want to say having older siblings, and again, brings it back to them already having experienced things, and them being more financially into life than me. Definitely played a factor in my well-being and where I'm at today.
Well, I'm very thankful for your siblings, because I met his 2 older brothers, Mike and Brian, before I met him. And then they made a move to Atlanta, and then we met each other, and then we got married and lived happily ever after.
There you go.
So this question comes from your little sister, Christina.
She's the smartest and wisest of all of us because of that whole sibling thing. Like literally, she like anytime somebody brings up my little sister, I'm like, she's so smart.
Their little sister is like, I want to grow up to be like her.
Yes, yeah. That's not like that's not a joke. That's a real
amazing
thing. Yeah, if you want to know like the perfect human being.
I thought Javi was pretty close to the most perfect human being until I met his little sister, and she literally is perfect.
Yeah.
And she has a lot of good questions in here. But
yeah, of course she does.
But this one is a funny one. If Javi was a Bobby, what would he be?
So this is just me explaining inside jokes. I love it because that's like anytime I use my own humor, people don't get it because I'm using inside jokes and they haven't been there for the inside jokes. So anyhow, what I would do with my little sister is I would say, hey, Tina, if you were a Bina, what would you do? And I would just constantly say that to her, just like nonstop. Like she would get home from school and be like, hey, Tina, if you were Bina, how would you be right now in life? And that's that's basically that whole joke. And if I was a Bobby right now, I would just be like, hey, Tina, if you were a Bina, what would you eat for 2/3 of the way through the day?
So your mom actually had asked the question of how has your father being a successful musician influenced you in your career path?
Well, both of my parents were super supportive. So what my dad would do is all of our siblings were into sports, and then they would dabble in instruments. Like my brother Brian played drums for a little bit, but by the time I came around, it was like, oh, this is the son that wants to like play like music and things like that. So I think there was some latching on to that. But what my dad would do is he would just always be playing his guitar whenever we were doing anything. We didn't really watch much TV, or they don't watch like any TV at all. And my dad would always either put on salsa, merengue, or any of those kind of records, and he would play to it, or he would just make up his own stuff. And he's one of those guys that can play music to, and like he can hear a song and then play it on the computer. That's where my brain's at. He can listen to a song and then play it on the guitar no problem. So I think growing up in that kind of household led to me wanting to do all of the music things. That and my brother's playing normal Nintendo music. For some reason, I'm really obsessed with chiptune music. But I think it has to do with counterpart and melody and harmony, because like in chiptune music, you can have a melody that's just one instrument, and then there's a counter melody to it that's another instrument, and it has to be so simple, but then it has to like melodically it has to hold your interest. That's a tangent, don't care. But yeah, my dad was awesome at all the instruments, and then super supportive, put me in the piano lessons, and then from there I just took off and did all the other things.
You talked a little bit about being in a garage band. And Missy, your sister-in-law, wants to know if Groove Shelter is going to do a greatest hits CD.
My high school band, Groove Shelter, we came out with 2 CDs, and I don't think we actually released our 3rd CD, but it was a hoot.
Which CD is the one that your mom has a box full of still at home?
That was our second one, Rise to Power. Our
if
first.
You guys want a copy of Rise to Power, we have some available.
Yeah. So, funny story. I was so proud of our first CD that we made, and this was back in the day where you could easily go to like Walmart and get the CD cases and in bulk, and then also get laser print software. So if you were to put it in just a normal printer, you can have the stickers that would physically go on a CD writable CD. I remember like seeing whole aisles full of CDRs back when like Napster and LimeWire were the thing.
Yeah.
We spent like a whole year or like a year and a half making an album. And it took so long because one, I was learning the software, and I still think it's like one of the best pieces of like content I've ever made with like as a team with another person. Like I still go back and listen to the music, and I'm like, there's some parts of the recording that are like so lo-fi, but it's still a good album. I'm like, man, I can't believe I wrote those lyrics. But anyhow, with that, I went to the store, got the stickers and everything, started putting them on all the CDs, and I printed out like 50, and we were going to sell them for a whopping like $2 per CD, making bank back then. And I printed our whole first versions of our CDs, and it was like the first 100. And we go to our high school, and we start selling them. And my friend Jordan is like, "Oh man, I love this album." It's supposed to be Pow Surprise, but I spelled them wrong. So it was Pow Supirse. And still to this day, I still spell the word surprise wrong. But there are like 100 collectible Groove Shelter albums out there that were called Pow Supirse. And we actually contemplated just calling the whole album Pow Supirse because of that. But we didn't. The next one I printed had the actual spelling correct, but Groove Shelter Pow Supirse was a thing.
Isn't some of the songs on iTunes? Didn't you post them somewhere?
They're not on iTunes. There is a Bandcamp. So if you were to look up Groove Shelter and Javier Mercedes, then I'll pop up.
So this next question comes from your super smart little sister, Christina. How have your dreams and goals adjusted throughout your life, and what motivates you to pursue them?
Jesus. See, this is how you know she's the smartest one of us all. However my like dreams changed over time. Well, that's easy. You start doing something, and then as a creative mind, you probably just get, in my circumstance, you either not reach the peak of something, but you get to whatever pinnacle that I didn't think I was going to get to. Not that I thought I was going to get to any sort of pinnacle of wherever in my career, but I find myself in this trajectory where I do something, and then if I get complacent, I don't like it anymore. Or it's not that I don't like it anymore. I'm like, what's the next challenge? Case in point, what I'm in the pursuit of doing right now.
Yeah.
So to give you an example, I started doing the, even in college, I was like, all right, I like doing the recording thing. Let's go to the School of Music. It took me 3 semesters to get into the School of Music. because I really didn't know how to read sheet music and play piano at that caliber. I started mastering that. Then I think I was going to do a marketing or like a media degree of some sort, or a media minor. And then I was like, nope, that's not going to do me any good because I can just learn that stuff on YouTube or whatever afterwards. So I switched it to physics, and then I got a minor in physics. This even comes to case in point while I was even in college. I was the lead editor, or not lead editor. I was a senior audio engineer of a group called the Ball State University Singers. And this is a show choir at the collegiate level, and we had a concert. We would tour all over the United States. The second year I was the lead audio engineer, I had already done our biggest show, the Ball State University Singers Spectacular. It was a big deal. We did it over 2 weekends, and imagine anything that you would see in Glee times 100. It's like super lights, decked out. Everybody from the college attends it, and it's like the biggest deal on campus when it's going on. With that being said, I did the sound for it 1 year, and then the next year came around, and I had so many friends that I wanted better opportunities for them in their careers. So what I did was, instead of me being the person to do the mixing board in front of house sound, I actually gave the responsibilities to a couple that's now married, Andy and Megan Ayers. I gave the responsibility to them because I knew that they could do it, and I didn't want to be a dick and be like, because it's like when you're in college, you want to get as many experiences as you can to like put on your resume, and I didn't have the experience of running monitors for a show like that. So I switched it up, and I was like, hey, can I run monitors while you guys do front of house? So that's one example. Then going and graduating, getting working at a professional recording studio, and getting to work with a whole bunch of awesome people. 4 years later, I was like, oh, I've done the recording studio thing, and I'm just going to pick up a camera and start doing that. So that's when I started doing that, and I left my job, and I was going to do freelance, but then I started working at the Chive, did editing and video production, videography things for 4 years there. Then I was like, cool, I think I got the hang of this. Let's move on to something different. How can I take everything I've done in my past life and encapsulate it into something that I can build for my own future?
Awesome. This kind of ties in with what you're talking about, but just going further back in life. So this question is from your mom. If you had to do high school over again, what would you change? And then what advice would you give Sabin and Micah?
If I had to do high school over again, I wouldn't change anything. It was like amazing. I think the one of the best things about high school is, well, and from my experience, was the being able to play and do all of the sports with like the extracurricular activities and all that stuff with your friends, and having like a team development thing.
Why do you think she's asking you that question though?
I'm not sure. Like, do you want me to attend high school again?
No. Because you've spoken a lot about how you weren't as driven in high school. So you weren't that great of a student in high school. You didn't, try as
that's
hard.
Funny. That's funny that you bring that up, because I wouldn't even, like, literally, I wouldn't change that, because like that was the thing. Like, I feel like people have to fail in order to get knocked down on their ass in order to like do something. And if I wasn't, who would have known what would happen if I would have gotten complacent when I went to college and I didn't, or like I already knew how to go and play the instruments and everything. Maybe I would be even further in life. I don't know. But I think I was like an average student in high school, but I also know that I spent more time having life experiences like with my friends and everything. And then that, obviously, talking about the Groove Shelter and all that other stuff, that's what cultivated me to who I am today. I wouldn't change anything.
I totally agree. I feel like, you can have a lot of regrets in life, but it doesn't, in my mind, make a lot of sense to have regrets, because you learn from those experiences, and they're basically what mold you to be who you are today. As long as you're not a dick, then you probably did something good with those experiences. This one is from your son, Do you like tow trucks or trash trucks better?
I didn't even know that he could speak, or I didn't even know that he could write by now. So, probably trucks. So our son right now has this thing. He's 2 and some change.
2 and 2 months.
2 and 2. Well,
almost 3 months actually.
Yeah, there's the people that have kids, and then the people that don't. And if you do have a kid, you know, like you still count the months in the the 2-year-old. Yeah. But if you didn't have kids, I would completely relate. If you're like 2 and some change.
Yeah.
So right now his favorite word is truck, and he does so many different inflections of it. If you're reading a book and it doesn't have any trucks, you better say bye to that book. It has to have trucks.
And if there is a truck, he will find it.
Yeah. And then he won't read any other page of that book. It's truck. I don't even truck.
Tow truck. Oh man. My mom wants to know, what is your favorite sport and why?
Of course she does. It's women's soccer. I was actually gonna wear the jersey for this. It's women's soccer. If I had the chance to drop everything and then just be like a documentary whatever thing for women's soccer, then I would do that for a living. Like if it would be the Etch-a-Sketch end of the Passion and Progress podcast, but I'd probably still incorporate some sort of podcast into it. But if the women's national soccer team wants to call me up,
that'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Why? Why do you love women's soccer so much?
Why? Because you played soccer. It's weird. I really don't know. Like other than you like showing me the ropes into soccer, because obviously I watched soccer a little bit growing up, but I was always cross country. And then I don't know. I don't know why. What's cool is you can watch the women's soccer games.
The NWSL?
Yeah, the NWSL. You can watch those without like having cable and all that stuff. Like you can still watch it on an app. So it's like you're closer to the people that are like doing. It's like getting in on the ground level of a sports endeavor.
And he actually knows a player on one of the teams. Well, went to the same high school
yeah,
as a player. Maybe not know, but
hey, Sarah Killian,
yeah,
if you want to get on the podcast, let's do it.
So your brother Mike wants to know, what lessons did you learn from Merce Made Media, and did that early venture influence what you're doing now?
What lessons did I learn? Well, I didn't really have a chance to do much with it. So I had a little stint between when I was doing my audio career and then pursuing my video career, where I was doing freelance video stuff. I only had like a handful of gigs that I did for some nonprofit and then some for-profit and some other endeavors in there too. But what was nice was knowing that I had the skill set to provide value to whoever hired me. And also throwing yourself into situations that were much more challenging than anything I'd done, especially if you're the only one to be held accountable for. I remember I did a corporate gig and I showed up with a Canon 7D where it was the old school. Back then it was like the new school. But when I showed up to the shoot with that camera, the 2 people that were hiring me were like, "What is that? Like, why are you using that?" And because they were in town from LA, the like production mecca, and I was in Atlanta, and they were like, you should have seen this rig. It was such a Jimmy rig. I had a Y bracket with my camera, and then I had a wireless receiver and a boom microphone and my my audio recorder on it too. So imagine me holding a old school or not old school, but like a Canon camera. And then on top of it, where like the flash would go, was just this contraption that looked like a mechanical monster on top, with like all of these wires going into the camera. And they're like, "Well, we've never shot on that before. Is this something new?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it'll be good." I mean, because I know the quality of the visuals would be fine, but I made it through that one, and it was a good learning experience. But that's the kind of thing where throwing yourself into a situation and then rising to the occasion. And that was definitely what helped prepare me for future video gigs, because I feel like whenever you take on stuff as a freelance video guy, you're always using your creative brain to circumvent things when you are on a budget.
Yeah. So my sister Heather wants to know, what is your greatest success to date?
You.
Ah, that's baloney. It's Micah and Sabin.
Well, they couldn't have been there without you.
I want to know how you're so good at making the cutest babies on the planet.
For sure, it's family. I mean, because if you could do whatever you want with your career, but if you don't have anybody to share with, then it's kind of useless. And at any rate, if it's not family, then like friends or anything like that. But it's just, don't be lonely.
In an ideal situation, this one's coming from my dad, what would you envision your business looking like in 3 to 4 years?
Being able to do anything that I want to creatively without being bound by the business end of it. There's a guy that we interviewed at the Chive that works for Blackout Signs that I want to get on the podcast. Jay is his name. And his wife does all the, I'm not talking about you doing the stuff, but his wife does all like the business things. And like when we did an interview with him, one of the questions we asked was similar to that. And he was like, I would be dead in the water if it wasn't for my wife, like doing the business end. Cause all I want to do is like the creative stuff. And this also touched on the, this same subject with Amber Griffin, the makeup artist. And she was like, all I want to do is just like make up and draw. And like, I just want to do that.
Yeah.
So a business to me, 3 or 4 year, whatever down the line, would be something where it's streamlined, obviously still challenging, but challenging in the way that it's challenging me creatively, not businessly. That's what would be nice.
You know, if you didn't have to start out doing the business stuff, would you have preferred doing it that way? Or do you think it's good that you've learned all of that stuff?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's better to learn all of the aspects of what goes on, because who knows what happens if you're like, all right, what's your profit loss margins and all that stuff? Obviously, I'm not to that point yet, but like I know that there's a column in QuickBooks about that. So we'll see. And not only that, but I feel like it teaches you the trial by fire in terms of being a salesman. Like, are you providing something that's so valuable that people will pay for it?
Right.
That whole endeavor. So that, I mean, that's only one aspect of it though, too. But the like I said before, the whole marketing thing, like I wouldn't have, now I know, like, oh, if I hired somebody, let's follow this cheat sheet for whenever I make a piece of content. Let's do all of these things and then put them in this kind of way and have that be the way that the content is spread across the internet. That whole thing, because now I know all that kind of stuff. But if I just started doing creative things, then I don't know. But that also begs the question, like, oh, if you just had all the time in the world to just like make the videos that you wanted to, where would that lead to? Like, oh, if I woke up and all I had to do was like make a video and record myself and then just like edit it and post it, then that would be, and I knew people would watch it, then that would be a completely different thing. Like maybe that's I don't know. But I'm glad I know the things now. I think the other thing too with that business wise is to set myself up in a way that I have enough time to spend with the family, where I'm not like always doing other stuff that's the marketing of the material. But that all gets back to like having a support system there. And also it would be cool that those people were stoked about what we were doing.
Yeah.
There.
I will say that I think one of the things that I've always found most impressive about you is your thirst to learn and to learn almost anything. Like, I really like learning things that I'm really interested in, and I'll put a lot of time and effort into learn something that I am interested in and that I think I'll be good at. Mm-hmm. But I'm not willing to try to learn something brand new that I don't think I'm going to be interested in or good at. And like that blows my mind about you, because you don't care what the challenge is. You're going to take your time to figure it out and to do it really, really, really well. Mm-hmm. Like that's like crazy to me. And I think that's honestly one of your best assets that you have, is your ability to kind of take the plunge and leap into anything and learn how to do it and how to do it really, really well. And to, for those of you that are following him kind of on this journey, the fact that he wants to share his journey with everybody else and teach others what the pitfalls have been and where the challenges have been and how to overcome those things to make it easier for others in the future is super impressive too. So,
well, thank you.
I'm just constantly proud of you and your strive to learn and be better with everything.
But that being said, asterisk, I'm like not going to be a surgeon or anything like that.
But you probably could be.
I don't know. I drink a lot of coffee. You don't want me operating on you.
And he's kind of blind.
Yeah.
Emily wants to know which recipe from the Gordon Ramsay cookbook is a must try.
So what she's referencing is if you look on my channel, I think it's still there. I have a playlist where I was cooking my way through Gordon Ramsay's cookbook, which I could still probably do, but I just feel like if I did that, then my whole user base would like be so all over the place. So I decided to cut that out just so I could have somewhat of a niche on my channel.
P.S. Javier is a phenomenal cook.
So I was cooking my way through Gordon Ramsay's cookbook, and I would say my favorite ones were that black bean dip.
Oh yes.
The black bean dip and the corn chowder thing. But it's not necessarily that it tastes good. It's because anything that you cook from that book, I would say a vast majority of the things that I cooked from that book while I was doing it taught me a new skill set to be able to cook anything with those same ingredients. So if you want to get really good at cooking, all I'll say is grab a cookbook. Maybe you should grab, I think it's called Home Cooking with Gordon Ramsay. It should put affiliate link at the bottom of the thing, and just start cooking stuff from there, because you start learning how different spices kind of meld with different proteins, vegetables, all this other stuff. And you learn how to like, oh, how do I do a stir fry? And then even if you're doing that, then you start looking up other videos on how to even implement what you're reading about. So then you come across other people that are doing other really cool things on YouTube, like the Brothers Green, and how they like cook stir fry, and then you can like utilize that to cook things even better, like all that other stuff.
Didn't it even like influence the equipment that you used in the kitchen?
Oh yeah, for sure. That like not only that, but it's like safety and knife skills and all that other stuff. Like there's, I don't know, people should, I mean, if you're into that thing, like right now, time is so valuable to me. It's hard to like cook a hearty meal every night. So I end up like, we do the California Pizza Kitchen frozen pizza probably one night a week. I don't know if that's good for your health saying that sentence now, but yeah, doing just a couple different recipes from that book has completely altered my cooking style for the rest of time. Thank you, Gordon Ramsay. Get on the podcast, please. Oh my gosh, could you imagine? Hey, you know what? That should be a thing. Gordon Ramsay and 2 Chainz. Both of those guys would be awesome to get. And that and Mark Cuban. All those guys would be cool to get on the podcast. Shout them out.
2 Chainz, you were even referenced in our engagement video. So we're going to need you to step up, man. So this one comes from my nephew, Cade. What is it like meeting new people for your podcasts?
Most of the time, because these are people that you have, like, take for instance, the guy that owned the restaurant there, which he was like kind of there regardless. Meeting the guy from the restaurant there, I had no idea who he was probably a couple days beforehand, and then I got a call from
the restaurant's name is actually there.
Yeah, I got a couple I got a buddy of mine connected us both, and then we just ended up doing a podcast, and I like didn't know much about him, and then my mind was blown, like, oh my gosh, this guy's had this past. And then I mean, also with like Mike Johnson and ATL, like doing the podcast with him, now have a relationship with somebody that has like a recording studio and is doing radio things and is encouraging me on this endeavor. But I didn't know anything about him, and then now I know things about him. But it's cool because one, when you meet new people, it was Cade who asked this. Mm-hmm. So when you get older, I want to say it's harder to have engaging conversations with adults, with fellow adults, a lot of it turns into like water cooler conversations. Like there's not much.
What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do? And then you like there's like a stock of 5 different questions that you might like. Oh, the weather, like it's snowpocalypse outside.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, those I don't know, whatever. But having a system in place like a podcast gives you an engine to have meaningful conversations with people that you've just met, that are pursuing their passions and being inspiring and all that other stuff. Like you get to hear their story and sit down for an hour and some change and just get to know who they actually are, as opposed to at a bar trying to speak over the speakers and all of the other things going on, and just knowing that they like Smeared Off or something like that, or dislike it, or whatever that may be.
So this one is from our niece Briley. What is something that you failed at trying to make your videos?
It's story. It's always story. Trying to create a story with whatever video content you're making. And this gets all the way down to vlogging. Like there's many times when we spent time with Briley and Cade where I was filming everything, and then you get to home and you're tired and you don't want to like, oh, what am I going to do with this footage? Well, then it just sits on your hard drive for forever. And then you don't do anything with it. It's like literally, I would say kind of failing at story, but it's from the standpoint of, or from the perspective of doing a quantity of videos where you can keep getting better and better and better and better and better at telling stories. Because if you're not good at that, then nobody's going to sit there and watch the videos because they're just not going to be into it. So for sure it is story. And that's the story.
That's the story. What has been your happiest moment in life?
Happiest moment in life? Marrying you.
It's a really good answer.
Yeah, I mean, it's serious. It's like, what are you going to do if you don't like, I don't know, if you're spending your whole life with someone and then you like hate your life, that kind of sounds like a life not worth living. But yeah, legitly being surrounded by somebody that's the most encouraging person ever while they're pursuing their passions and they're in progress of living a more purposeful life, having somebody there to motivate them or motivate myself, and keep on trucking is the thing. Yeah, full circle. But yeah, man, wedding.
Well, good, because we share that.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that, but I mean, I think the other cool thing about weddings is that I know we always talk about this whenever the wedding comes up, but like you get to, it's like a meeting of all the different cultures that you've been a part of in your whole life. Like when you marry someone and you have the wedding, just speaking from our personal experience, it's like, oh, there's our friends from this like pocket of our lives, and here's the friends from that pocket of, and here's the family from like that part of wherever, and those people are flying in from that place, and then they all get to meet each other and you have like a grand old time.
Yeah, it truly is like being totally surrounded by people that love and care about you, and a cultivation of happiness in one day.
Yeah, it's kind of lost within, like, so like the wedding day is nice, but I want to say it's the whole, like however long the experience lasts, it's like that whole experience, because the actual day of the ceremony, like the dancing's nice, but like the actual day of just things going on, I want to say like the bride and groom just don't get any time to actually.
Yeah, too much preparation.
I feel like the actual time of the ceremony and all that other stuff is, even during the actual ceremony or the actual like wedding reception, is more spent engaging with the other people. And also it's like a whole bunch of like other things going on, that you're talking to other people, and it goes so fast that you don't, like, unless you have like a video or anything of it, like you don't really remember much.
Yeah.
But I want to say it's more like the day before the wedding when you get to like just hang out and like drink with all the other friends, and then like the day, but the day before the day where you're still prepping and you like it's like team building because maybe some of your friends and family are there like helping you make all of the like trinkets and doodads that go on the table and all that stuff. Like I feel like it's those moments that make the wedding experience, not necessarily the actual like beautiful looking wedding itself, which is amazing and awesome, but I think it's more an all encompassing, like even the day after when everybody's like hungover or whatever, and then they all go out to breakfast, and because once the actual day you have like so many responsibilities, even though people come up to you and they're like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be responsible for this, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, well, that's cool. Good thing nobody's going to get the Chipotle because we didn't like get the thing. like it's when you don't have the responsibilities. That's when you can just like hang out and do things. By the way, we had Chipotle for our wedding, so that was cool. Sponsor us, sponsor podcast.
For our rehearsal dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Chipotle fail that turned into a success. We were all right.
Great customer service at Chipotle.
Yeah. Okay, 2 more questions. One is from Briley. And how is it being a father of 2 versus a father of just 1? Now that you've been a father of 2 for
the practical thing is both Sabrina and I would switch off days that we would be taking care, that we would wake up with our first kid, Sabin. And now that just doesn't happen. Like that's that's the main difference at this point in time. Obviously, it's like less sleep, but it's like, all right, now if one parent's hands are free, they're not really because they're taking care of the other kid. Just from a practical standpoint, do I need to say like emotionally? Yes. So having 2 kids, I think one of the things that we were worried about was being able to spread the love between both kids, but I don't think that's really a factor once you have the 2 kids, because both of them, you love them just as much as each kid individually, and you try and spend as much time with both of them, and you give all the kisses. Even the like when you get to 2 years old and you just have all slobber and snotty things, you're like, oh wait, can I still get a kiss?
Yes.
Trash truck.
And when their answer is no to every question you ask them,
you still give them kisses.
All the kisses. So last question, being that it is Thanksgiving week, what are you most thankful for?
All these questions are just straight up like, well, my family. Family is the answer to a lot of these because it's the cornerstone of everything you're doing. They're supporting you or supporting me through everything I'm doing. And I think that's like one of the biggest factors. And it all comes down to like, once you do something and you achieve some sort of success, then what does it mean if you don't have anybody to share it with?
I like it.
Go team. By team, I mean Merce Nation. And by Merce Nation, I mean Mercedes family. If you liked this podcast, if you made it this far into the podcast, thank you so much you must be a diehard fan of me. And I hope you learned, or I guess got something from my past experiences in life. But if you could, leave me a review on iTunes or share it out with a friend. If anything, just have a great Thanksgiving with your family, which I guess is a great through line throughout this whole thing, in terms of being thankful for what you have. So if you guys are around family and friends this Thanksgiving, give them a little hug, do all the things. And most of all, live a life of abundance. I will see you guys later.